Hi folks, Jake here with Janet Davis Acoustic Music, and I was just getting ready to put some spikes in the banjo here, and I get a lot of calls, people asking, they'll buy spikes from us and they'll call and, want instructions as to how to put them in properly. So I just figured we'd make this little video tutorial here, and I can just refer people to that so they can actually see what we're doing. It's hard to explain over the phone sometimes. And keep in mind, there's more than one way to do this. This is just my approach with what I have available to me here in the workshop to use. If you don't have the same kind of stuff I do, you can still accomplish the same thing in different ways. But basically, my approach is just like driving a nail in a board. If you've ever done that, it just happens to be usually these boards are $3,000 to $5,000. So. We'll get started. Let's go over here and take a look at the banjo. You can do a lot of this from the banjo being in the case. And what I do, this particular banjo is a D-ring. And first thing you need to do, obviously, is establish where you want the where you want the railroad spikes. And not only which frets you want them on, but what kind of player you are. Some people, like this one in particular, I'm going to be setting the spike back just a little bit farther than usual to allow the player to get a little more room to actually fret it if they want to. Now you can still fret it on top of the spike, it just makes it a little bit more uncomfortable. But what I do is I have several of these. Basically I'll pre-cut a marker. I'll cut a piece. It could be anything. This is actually, I have a plastic toothpick, and I'll set it on there against the string and slide it back against the fret, and then I'll make my mark out to the edge of the fingerboard. If you're looking close there, you can see my pencil mark that I made. And on the D-ring, years ago, I don't know if they're still this way or not, just because I've avoided it, but years ago, if you ever put a spike in where the position marker was, when you go to drill in, for some reason the position marker was really long. It was like a long aluminum tube or something. And whenever your drill bit would hit that, it would shoot eject that position marker, and we'd have to reinstall that. But like I said, that's a lesson that was learned a long time ago. So I'm marking it just in front of the position marker on the side. And what I do here, I've made my line out, and I actually, for what I have here, I need to take just a little nail to mark my hole, and I'll put it right on that line and right against the string. I'll just give it a little tap. And that's where I like to do it. You can, so I don't know if you can see that there, I got my hole. Or at least I got it started. And depending on the kind of banjo you're running, if it has binding up the side of the neck, if that happens to be a little too close and you're worried about splitting that fingerboard out, you can move them to the other side of the string. It'll stretch the string just a little bit more out of tune when you go to use your spike, but life is about compromises. So, all right. So now that I got my pilot hole started, we're going to go over here and I'm going to actually drill that out. So at this point I can take the string down. Take it out of the spike there. Alright, so let's go over here real quick. Now what I'll do is I'll take my Dremel tool, and I've got I don't know if you can see that there. Here's one new in the package. You can get these at any kind of hardware store. It's got a real fine, and it's actually slightly tapered, drill bit on it. And the reason I have to do the pilot hole with a nail first is because whenever if you try to just make the mark and then turn this on and run it in there, it'll want to chatter all over the fingerboard and you can kind of scar it up. So I just make my little pinhole with the nail, and then I'll actually take this bit here and set it right on the the hole, and then when I turn it on, I'll drill in. Now I always go at a slight angle this way, just so the string's not pulling directly out on the spike. You don't really have to do that. I've seen people go at angles, some of them a lot steeper than they need to be. Really, you can go straight in as long as you don't go too deep, and as long as when you drive the spike, you're actually driving the spike into the wood. It's not just being pushed into a hole. So we'll go ahead and run this in here real quick.
You gonna cut me into the video?
Giggy!
Enough of that.
Alright, sorry for that interruption, folks. You guys see what I have to deal with all the time around here? Okay, so we got this started in our hole. I'm gonna turn this on. Now we've officially drilled our pilot hole. Alright, so let's go back to the bench. Sorry to abruptly move the banjo out of your view. This is all unrehearsed, folks, so bear with us. Alright, after all that actually comes the process of installing a spike. So I've got a few set aside over here. Now what I'll do, if you see my spike here in my hand, they're very small. I'll actually, because I don't drill the pilot hole all the way down, do just enough to get the spike started. I actually take a pair of end cutters and cut off the actual pointed part of the spike. And that's just an old framer's trick to keep from splitting wood whenever you drive it in. If you got a pilot hole, chances are you're not going to have to worry about it. I just do it for double safety. Alright, so we get our spike started here. Don't really worry too much about how straight it is yet. Go ahead and give it a little tap. Make sure we're started. Then I'll actually take my punch and run it in there a ways. So I just set my punch on here. And another important thing, I take a towel, set it on the strings, or a t-shirt or whatever, because if it don't, someone's going to think you're trying to kill a cat. Or worse. And like I said, you could just, if you don't have anything else, you can use, I actually usually use a neck rest here, as you can see. And I set that on a towel, but I'm demonstrating this because most people probably won't have that. You can just use the case as a brace to do this. Tell me when you can see okay there, Robbie.
Okay, that's as good as it's gonna get.
Alright, you guys just have to use your imagination. I'm just driving a spike in. Use your imagination. I should have completed the word. I can't think and do at the same time.
I prefer to use my imagination.
So if you're doing it right, you'll obviously meet some resistance. So I know it's in there good and snug. Once we get it down to kind of a point where it could become possible that you easily slip and drive it on in. We don't want to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and move this string out of your all's way. What I take, I've got one of these here. You can make something similar out of a business card or a credit card or whatever. Basically, you just need something to, I'll run it up under the strings and over the D string there, under the spike. And that is just a fail safe in case I drive it too far. It's not going to drive into the wood. I'll be able to still pull it out. Once you do it a bunch though, that doesn't really happen, but it's just in case. So we've got our spike pretty well seated now. And you want to kind of, if you want to kind of get down here, Robbie, at this angle, I'll move this out so you can see. You want to get it to where you can see now it's still a bit tall. It's over here. So come over to this side. There you go. Get like parallel with it.
We're gonna have our viewers drunk from vertigo.
Yeah. There, it started to focus. So you're going to actually want that spike to be below the frets, okay? I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to have to give it a couple more taps. That way, especially, you know, this particular banjo, I'm just showing you how to do one, but there'll be like 4 or 5 spikes in it by the time I'm done. And you're going to want it whenever you spike or fret the next fret. Obviously, you're going to want clearance where you're not getting a buzzy sound from the, you know, fretted string hitting the spike instead of clearing the next fret. So that looks pretty good right there. So at this point, I'll take and make sure it's straight. It looks pretty good. We got it in there pretty straight. All right, now we're pretty much done. I'll take a piece of sandpaper. This is just something I found makes it a little smoother right away. You don't have to break in so much. And I'll just fold it like so and go between the spike and the fretboard with it, back and forth. That just works off any burrs. It's going to make it easier to slip that string under there. Now, as with any spike, you're going to have to be deliberate about it. You're going to have to, you know, take the string, push it down, and then slide it back up under the spike. You have to know how to kind of use them. So that's all there is to it. Now we'll maybe cut from filming here, and I'll put the string back on, and I'll show you how it works. And then it's just at that point, you know, lather, rinse, repeat until you're done. All right, folks, that pretty well sums it up there. When I get the string back on it, I'll always test, note the fret before it. Make sure I'm not getting any buzz. I'll note next to it. And then lastly, I'll check and make sure the spike works. Some people use their right and left hand, or just, you can use 2 fingers of the left hand, but basically, you will push down each side of the spike and push the string back up under it. So that's all there is to it. And then when you're done with using the spike, you just pull down and there you go. Now you'll see if it's installed properly, the string itself will run just under where the post of the spike goes in. That's ideal. Really, it doesn't matter. I've seen really bad spike jobs where everything's uneven and some of them set in a lot farther, you know, in from the edge of the fingerboard than others, and they still work fine. So don't worry too much about it. Also, if you ever wanted to remove the spikes, we can just pull these out and you know, fill it with a little super glue and ebony dust, and you can hardly even tell they were there. And then you can always, you know, do them again if you mess it up. But at that point, once I got all the spikes in where I want it, I'll run a little lemon oil or almond oil or anything, you know, any kind of oil intended for wood is fine on a fingerboard. I'll just get a little bit on my finger and run up along those spikes to, you know, kind of recondition the places where I've been, you know, working, and that kind of swells the wood back in and should be good to go. So I hope that makes enough sense, and I hope you could see well enough to, you know, to make sense of what we were doing. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense, and I hope you can see well enough to see what we were doing. All right, thanks folks, see ya.